Namaste, Jai Bharat. Let's talk about positivism. People also call positivism as the positive philosophy. See, in academics, there occurs confusions much more than clarity. If you say that ignorance is bliss, then there is no problem. But when you try to know things, when you try to understand things and know things, then the confusions are, let me call it as mandatory. They happen. Clarity remains far flung. Let's see what positivism is about. It is simple. If anyone who tries to read positivism or positive philosophy, Auguste Comte, who is the propounder, say inventor of positive philosophy or positivism, he narrates, he makes his own narrations. He is not a philosopher per se, sociologist actually. He talks about three stages. In maybe human knowledge tradition, he makes a distinction between theological stages, metaphysical stages, and also the positive stage, which he calls as scientific. Now, from here begins the entire lot or the entire story of confusions. First of all, I will read in between lines. First of all, when he says something as a positive philosophy or something as positive, then let me ask this question which you should all have asked. What is the implied negative? What is the implied negative? Of course, if the question was asked to Comte, he would have definitely called the implied negative is religion, and of course that is the case. Now here, we must read his context. He is a European, Frenchman, and his background is that of medieval period. They are slowly coming out of medieval period, which takes time. Medieval period is typically what Comte calls as the first stage, theological. He calls it as theological. But for him, to make a positive philosophy juxtaposing a negative philosophy, where the negative philosophy is nothing other than religion, specifically the Catholic Church. That was his background. Because religion, in his inexperience, in his context, was disallowing any progressive thought. His context, his time. So he wanted to speak about something positive. Then he makes this narration of three stages: theological stage, metaphysical stage, and scientific stage. Now here, with the Comte, what happens is, there comes a kind of obsession which goes to the extent of fetishism of science. They wanted to make everything scientific. And what is not scientific, or what is not given in science, what is not presented through demonstrability, that is observation, experiment, proving, disproving, what is not given through demonstrability is not accepted as knowledge. And this is tremendously, ridiculously reductionistic. This is tremendously reductionistic, very unfortunate. And this collapses your real enthusiasms to know and quest to know. Fine. Now let's see what is this science all about. What is science? What makes something science? Normally people say science is systematic study. Yes, of course. And science is not the only systematic study. Science has the property of demonstrability. Wonderful, that's correct. Science has the ability to demonstrate what they're trying to say. And in science, there are many scientific laws, scientific established laws. And these laws are really helpful for anyone who is doing something new, because these laws are already there. There's already established knowledge. You really have to continue that from the point where some of your predecessor had stopped. You simply have to continue from there only. All these are fine with science. But the question is, what precisely makes science science? Let me speak quickly. See, the knowledge of causation, causality, causal connection, and the demonstrability through creation of causation to produce a desired effect, all these constitute science. In other words, if you simply want me to speak in one sentence, the knowledge of causation or causal connection between a given antecedent and consequent is that what can make anything scientific. So, what one scientist is expected to do, or what a scientist normally do, is to go into finding out causal connections. What causes what? And mostly it may be reverse reasoning. On the basis of the effect, one is trying to understand what caused this effect. And once the cause is imagined, which of course is intuitive, and science cannot tell you how intuition is made, what must have created this effect, then a scientist makes a hypothesis, then he goes on experimenting. What he does actually, he artificially creates the cause and looks for the possible result. If it doesn't get the possible result, he will change the cause, and he will keep doing it until he gets the desired result. And this is what precisely science is. And of course, science is helped, aided by primarily scientific instruments, and these scientific instruments are wonderful pieces of invention, and their primary function is to enhance the limitations of our sense organs. What I can't see normally, I can see through an instrument. What I can't hear normally, I hear it through an instrument. I cannot see you, who happens to listen to me. You cannot hear me directly, but this instrument you hear, and I expect that you must have heard, etc. So the real thing that makes something scientific is the knowledge of causal connection, and once it is known, it can be established from a fact. It is from a antecedent to consequent connection. It is through many observation and experiment, it develops into a theory and finally a law. Fine. Such scientificity, is it possible in the area of society? That is very ambitious of Comte. He actually wanted a social physics. Knowledge is socialist, basically. Knowledge of society must be scientific. When he says scientific, if you take the spirit, then things become clear. He says it should be scientific, and if you go for the spirit with Auguste Comte, he says nothing theological, nothing superficial, nothing unrealistic should be given to you as knowledge. To that extent is fine. Most likely that must have been his objective and interview. So positivism implies a negativism, which is a religion. Christianity, to be precise, and that Christianity of the medieval period, to be further precise. And then with that background, he hopes for a scientific situation where everything can be scientific, which is another speculative disorder. Let me call it as a speculative disorder. Now, this speculative disorder goes to the extent of a creation of social sciences. And here, of course, people will object, people will find it very uncomfortable, but I will say nonetheless. Social sciences. They wanted to make, either directly or indirectly, explicitly or implicitly, they wanted to make knowledge of society scientific, or to make social knowledge scientific. And they have, many of them have simply copied. The copying is a disease. They simply copied the methods of science and they tried to paste it to the knowledge of society. To call social knowledge as a social science. I think that the expression social sciences is contradiction in terms. Should be contradiction in terms. If it is social, then it can't be scientific. If it is scientific, then it cannot be social. Comte's concern is very intelligible, very clear. He wanted to get clear knowledge of things without any so-called bias, clothing of a theological or metaphysical guise. Fine. But that doesn't give him the license to make it scientific. Then that is another kind of mistake which is committed by him. Fine. See, how does the researches in social sciences normally go? The copying has gone to this extent, very pathetic at times. Copying has gone to this extent. You see, a scientific research, a scientist, he is helped by a scientific law to go forward. That's very legitimate. That's the only way he can save time and effort. And there are established scientific laws. If you see some phenomenon in question for him, if he can show that is belonging to, or if he can see that this phenomenon in question can be explained using this particular scientific law, then his work becomes very easy. And that is how science goes. That is how scientist goes. And that's their work. Can you do the same thing in society? Is a question that those who are concerned with social knowledge should ask. What I have seen many people doing it is, what they do is, instead of a scientific law which can explain a scientific phenomenon perfectly and which is most spontaneous and natural, some people would take a social theory to explain a social situation, and this create all kinds of confusions. First of all, the social theories which people call as theories are called as philosophy on a different level. And what kind of philosophy? They are mostly European. Yes, I think European only. What kind of theories? They are speculative theories. And what a speculative theory has to do with the scientific theory based on the knowledge of causal connection? Nothing. But what they do, suppose one is trying to explain a situation in a given society, small society, and he is trying to explain the situation in a society in Bharat, for example, with some law of Jürgen Habermas. And then they would try to say public sphere is this. Now, there are two different contexts. And first of all, to explain a social phenomenon with a social theory may be not adequate. At least one can say that it cannot be foolproof. I do not know to what extent it can help a person who is undergoing some studies, but they have nothing to do with the certainties of scientific knowledge. Who is a person who wrote about the idea of social sciences? Peter Winch. He wrote that book, The Idea of Social Sciences. He wanted to make social studies social sciences. But then all these criticisms are equally leveled against him. How can it be scientific? It's inappropriate to extend the scientific methods to the study of society. They should have distinct methods. You should develop your own method of understanding, and you should study them as two different things. Otherwise, you will jump into what Gilbert Ryle, I spoke yesterday, mentions as a category mistake. Category mistake. Laws belonging into one category is simply picked up to evaluate a phenomenon that belongs to another category. You get into a semblance of mistake. Eventually, what happens? There are contradictions and confusions and problems, and nobody understands anything. The person who delivers things don't understand it perfectly, and obviously, the person who hears it also remains in confusion. And some places people are very interesting. When they don't understand something very clearly, they will think it as something very serious beyond my comprehension, so it should be great. And when somebody speaks unintelligible things for an hour, fireworks, verbal fireworks for 1 hour, and if a person sitting in front of him starts thinking that it is my inability, I am not competent enough to comprehend what he speaks, my mistake. But then that what he says must be really great, really deep, really solid, and really be a system of knowledge. It's only that I don't understand. But this person should speak that I don't know is that I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me is that it doesn't make sense to me. Of course, I speak this from the background of the Mimamsa philosophy of Bharat. What is not intelligible to me, I should say that I don't understand it. If I'm incapable, fine. I'll try to be. But then, if I can't understand, let me say that I don't understand it. I look for clarity, so I will look for clarity. Things should be clear to me. Not that if somebody comes and tells me it's clear to him, fine, maybe. If I am not to that level of understanding, fine. I am with my limitations, but I must know even within my limitations, something should at least make sense to me. Now, this kind of things go on that they keep quiet and they think the person who speaks unintelligible narrations is very intellectually sound, bright, great, etc. And I don't understand because I am unable to cope up with him and all. These kind of things one should not. So, the very the very effort of making scientific knowledge out of society is anachronistic one. It's very funny. You should not go for wrong things. You can't really make scientific knowledge from the to understand the society. Let's understand these two things are different. It's something like feminism that I spoke yesterday. You don't try to equate man with woman because they are more than equal in the sense that these two are two. If you accept these two things as two different principles, each one having their distinct and total and complete role to play and manifest in lives, where the question of contradiction comes between the principle of man and principle of woman. A man cannot perform the function of a woman and vice versa. So why do you want to speak of equality and get into complications of confusions? They're two distinct things, two different things. Each one complete in itself. That's it. Each one complete in itself. So even the question of equality should not be asked. They're two complete wholes, complete principles. Similarly, the knowledge of the knowing business of society should be a complete whole, and the knowing business in science should be another complete whole. Why do you want to collapse them and create problems and confusions? And there are many people who will spend their lives in researching, spending time reading, writing, publishing. Of course, publishing has become an industry because until you keep publishing, nobody gives an extension of your contract, and then you food is at stake. This brings out only trash in the long run, not knowledge. Verbal fireworks. It only brings out verbal fireworks. Nothing really concrete. Nothing comes out from it. And these are the common problems in the world of learning and teaching on a higher level. And this shall keep going on. And somebody should speak also against it from time to time. Whether or not it makes any impact or not is secondary. Saying is our duty. Like Kant has had one sense, duty for the sake of duty. Don't expect what happens. Of course, much before Kant, it was told by our Bhagavan Shri Krishna, the king of Gujarat. We call him as Dwaragadish. Just do your job through dharma. Don't bother about what happens. Because you have performed your duty, because performing of our duty is your dharma. And don't expect it should be followed by results. Results will come when they are to come, and that's it. And that's it. That doesn't, if you can't say that I won't do things until I make sure the results. No, you can't do that. You do your part. Whether or not the result comes or not. The real spirit of Bhagavad Gita is this: do your part of duty without anticipating or expecting result. This of course is very important. Doing something in an expectation of something in return is not really a moral action. Borrowing from Kant. Is not really a moral action. The real action which can be called as moral action is an outward manifestation of an inner goodness, inner essence. It's something like a lamp burning. It gives out light. Light travels, and somebody will make use of it, and somebody does not make it. And even if nobody makes use of it, it used to be there. So long as the lamp is burning, the light is there for anyone to make use of it. Someone may make use of it, someone may not. But at some time, somebody may make use of it. Fine. But then you have done your part. You have performed your part, and that should be the spirit. So let's talk about positive philosophy. Comte was an honest man. He, with all his backgrounds and stage setting, that is knowledge stage setting. This knowledge stage setting is very complicated in Europe, because unlike what is in Bharat, that there's a regular knowledge tradition in the background, which is the Veda Upanishadic knowledge tradition. If one goes to that to find out, he would not be confused into looking at phenomenal world. There are a lot of breaks in the European knowledge tradition. Somebody with this and somebody with that. Sometimes they are disconnected. So, in a context of Auguste Comte, he is very earnest and very honest, and is trying to do away with the confusions which the theological stage had created, then the metaphysical stage had created in front of him, which are there in front of him. Then he goes into the scientific stage, hopefully for him that the scientific stage is going to repair all these damages. That's not the case in any case. Well, these are the things that normally happens in academic world. The students remain worried. The teachers many times remain more worried if they are if they give time to think. Otherwise, just deliver and just get away. That's a different way of teaching. But then, if you think, they also remain worried. The students also remain worried. They'll ask questions and they may not get proper answers. Or even if they get answers, the answers might not satisfy them on a long run. All these things are there. So, when you look at theories and traditions, try to follow the Mimamsa system of philosophy, as I've just mentioned in between, that try to analyze. And once it is convincing you, then only proceed. Let it convince you, then only proceed. If you are not convinced by a system of theories, do not assume that it is my mistake or my inability, my incapacity. Even if that is the case, let it be. You can always try to overcome. But so long as you don't get it clear, it fact remains a fact that you have not got it clear. Let's be honest to oneself. Let us be honest to ourselves and say, I don't understand. I don't understand. This thing, if it is not my cup of tea, fine. But I don't understand. That's all, folks, for the time being. Namaste. Jai Bharat. Jai Shri Ram.